All right, guys, today I'm going to be doing a review of Beyond the Timescape. It was written by Ergen on I read it on Wuxia World. The story opens with a lot of solar terms, or uses a lot of Chinese solar terms, like awakening of insects, summer solstice, small grain, start of summer. And so the first one is called Awakening of Insects, the first volume. The first arc starts with the main character, Zhu King, living in a forbidden zone. It's kind of where he wakes up in the start of the story. We get a backstory beautifully woven into the narrative as he's moving through this forbidden zone. And he talks about how the broken face of the god looked at the city that he was living in, and that causes Forbidden Zone to be created. And he's stuck inside the Forbidden Zone while it's fully forming. And so because of that, he's able to move around inside of it, but no one else is able to get into it. Everyone in the Forbidden Zone, or at least almost everyone, has died, and almost all the animals have died except for the birds. So he's traveling through this, and anyone who survived gets mutated into mutant beasts. Anyone who dies, their corpse could also continue to move around and attack people. So it's an extremely dangerous area. A lot of the creatures, which are called grus, come out at night, and so it takes several days for this thing to form. So at nighttime, Zhu King hides in his hidey hole, and during the day, he goes around looking for resources, trying to avoid danger. So in doing all of this in the beginning of the first arc, we learn about the broken face of the god, and when it looks at a place, creates a forbidden zone. And we learn about what mutagen is and how the people in this world handle it and deal with it, because it's everywhere, and they need to absorb spirit energy in order to cultivate, and as they do, they get mutagen in them, and so it builds up in their body faster. You need to be stronger to survive in this world, and so it kind of a danger that comes along with it. So this is a really unique start. A lot of the stories don't have something this is not an element that's in it. Normally you just grab spirit power and you get stronger, and it's everything else in the world that you kind of fight against. So it just kind of adds an element to the world that really in this early parts of the book, it's much bigger. Obviously, as they get later on, it becomes less of a thing. So for the masses of people who have to rely on purifying this out, the techniques that they have are inferior to big organizations, large sects, holy lands, where they're able to have more powerful ones, and with having more powerful ones, you're able to keep your people alive longer, live better lives. They become stronger, they have more influence, they can get better techniques. So the masses don't have access to these more powerful techniques, or they don't cultivate at all, but they're still subject to the mutagen. So to deal with that, they have to eat white boluses, which purify it out and help to keep them alive longer in this miserable world. So anyone who cultivates but is at the bottom rung, very low levels, when they are fighting or when they have to absorb more ki to become stronger, they have to deal with the mutagen. And it's formed into blotches in the main character's arm. So at each level he goes, he forms another blotch. And so other techniques have it in other places, other parts of them, but each one kind of sequesters it off to some part of the body. And the better the technique, the better it is they are at purging it or containing it, so they can become more powerful. And as you take white boluses, it will slowly purify the blotches on you. So Zhu King's character is introduced in the first chapter as calm, good at hunting, good at planning. He's considerate of the dead, which comes into play. He's cautious. He's ruthless to his enemies. But he's got a good head on his shoulders, got good street smarts to him. He grew up in the slums and managed to survive in that environment. We get to see how gruish the world is, which is a term that's the first time I've heard about it here. I think it's made up by Deathblade. As he's traveling through, he kind of explains how grus are and how monsters are, and they're kind of separate. And grus tend to be more ghostly sort of things, and monsters are monsters, and mutated beasts are monsters and mutated beasts. So there's a lot of blood and things that deal with blood, grotesque monsters, and a lot of beasts that eat and hunt humans in this. So it's kind of a grimdark-esque, at least in this early part, for sure. So lots of undead, spirit-possessed items, possessed people. At one point, he finds a ragdoll bunny that is sitting in the blood of the kid who owned it. And when he sees it there, and he sees the dead bodies and stuff, and he passes through, and he notes the doll. And on like the second day he comes back, the doll is then sitting up and turns to look in his direction and has just like gaping holes in its eyes. And so he just nopes out of there real fast. He's like, Gruz, you don't look, you don't see, you ignore them and you run away. That's kind of how you can deal with it at that level. But as far as the early arc in this going around, the important things is he finds, this is where he finds the violet crystal in this forbidden city, or in this forbidden ground. We learn about the broken face of the god. We learn what is keeping our main character going. He wants to live so he can have a chance to meet his family again, who he lost contact with, but he's sure they exist. His second desire is related to the first. He wants to cultivate, because he needs power to live longer. So power comes from cultivating. Cultivating lets you live longer, lets you fight and survive and scrape and get by. So after he finds the crystal, he ends up implanting it into himself to hide it, because he realizes what it can do. And it can heal him and give him, bring spirit power to him. So he realizes this is like a treasure, but where am I going to hide it? And he's injured at the time of doing this. And so he first tests it on a vulture. And by stabbing it into the vulture, and then it starts to heal the vulture, and the vulture then becomes more energetic and stronger and starts to recover. He kills it, and then he takes it out and it's like, okay, so it's not a bad thing. And then just sticks it in his own wound, and then begins to heal over. And so now he's just like, wow, I feel great. So he sees that it's healing him. And I think even having it in his hand, he notices that it's like healing his body just by holding this violet crystal. All right. Zuking gets a cultivation bamboo slip from the magistrate's mansion that he had learned about when living in the slums. So before the broken face of the god had looked at the city, he lived in the slums, and he knew that the magistrate had this cultivation technique that was super important, and not everybody wanted it, but everyone who wanted to cultivate knew he had one, and the city guards cultivated, so they were stronger. And so from reading from just this script, this cultivation bamboo slip that he gets, we get a big look at the mainland. We get some world building that goes on. So he learns about the mainland that has better cultivation methods, called Revered Ancient. The violet crystal allows Zuking to advance to the key condensation stage just a few hours after he inserts it in himself, and gets his first blotch on his arm of where all the mutagen has been concentrated. That's for the technique that he's practicing. The technique that he's cultivating is the Mountain and Seas incantation, which is like a physically building one, so it makes him stronger and faster and more powerful physically. It doesn't give him the ability to like fly or to manipulate elements or anything at extremely low levels. So eventually the blood rain stops falling, and the newly formed forbidden zone is opened up to the outside. Sunlight is able to be seen because now it's no longer covered by these blood rain clouds. The mutagen and monsters have destroyed a lot of the city, but a lot of valuables still remain. So it's a lot of scavengers are going to be showing up. So Zuking, for some reason, gathers all the corpses in the city, in each area, and gives them a proper burial by burning them in these giant corpse heaps. So by giving them a proper burial, their bodies can't be turned into undead, and it's kind of like the right thing to do in this world. As he's finishing up, he meets the first team of scavengers, and he has a run-in with a character named Cruel Ox. This interaction sets up Zuking's leave no potential threat alive policy, which is actually threaded throughout a lot of the book, and is and it's kind of funny in some of the interactions that end up happening. It becomes a thing. Like, he has this list, he has these people who are on the list, and some of the arcs are him just knocking people off the list. So even though he's offered a spot on the team, that this team has been put together temporarily to explore, so the people they don't all know each other or are like one big cohesive team. They're all working for someone named Sergeant Thunder. And Sergeant Thunder then asks the kid if he wants to follow Sergeant Thunder, not the entire team, but just himself, because he sees what he's doing, and it kind of moves him a little bit. And so he's like, you know, you have a small sliver of humanity in this very cold world. And so he brings him along. But even though that happens, Zhu King still, because he's got someone, you know, on his list of leave no potential threat alive, he does kill Cruel Ox in his sleep and disposes of his body with a venom that basically causes the entire body to turn into goo and blood and disappear into the ground. Sergeant Thunder knows what happens because he's a cultivator, but he keeps his secret from the temporary team. He even went so far as to hide all of Cruel Ox's items, so it looks like he left in the night. Everyone else is just like, oh, I guess he got what he wanted, and he's booking it out of here. After 2 seconds, nobody even takes a second thought. All right, so now begins Zhu King's life as a scavenger. Zhu King learns about 7 Blood Eye cities, so we start to hear a little bit of, you know, a little foreshadowing, that one of the local powerhouses in control of the region, along with the Church of the Departed and the Violet Lands, each has a method to get to the revered ancient mainland. So in the conversation that he overhears, the scavengers are mentioning how they want to make it to revered ancient because that's where humankind originated. And boy, wouldn't it be great to live on the mainland where it's wonderful, more wonderful compared to here. And so Sergeant Thunder mentions how 7 Blood Eyes and the Church of the Departed and the Violet Lands each have a method to get there. You know, oh, you just got to do this and this and this. And one of the methods he mentions is living treasures. So this is the first mention of living treasures. They're people whose bodies have been linked with magical treasures. Their flesh and blood absorbs the polluted mutagen from the treasures, thus making it possible to use the treasures safely. However, because of that, their bodies quickly wither up and they die, according to Sergeant Thunder. Sergeant Thunder gives Zhu King 3 steamed buns, and after taking several steps, like excessive steps, to make sure they weren't poisoned or cursed in any way, he eats 2 and stows the 3rd. And this act of kindness really makes his heart, stirs his heart, and he makes a note to repay this debt, because in Zhuangsha's, there's a lot of, you kind of keep a score of, I repay grievances tenfold and you repay a debt threefold kind of thing. Like you always give back what you're given more than what you received. It's just 3 steam buns to Sergeant Thunder, but to Zhu King, it's a great act of kindness. Sergeant Thunder tells him that if he wants to pay him back, that he should make a meal for him. Zhu King asks him what does he like to eat, and he says he likes to eat snakes, which comes in later. Okay, so next is the White Bolus's mission. So once they get out of the Forbidden region, they go to the scavenger camp that is by another Forbidden region, but it's the one that Sergeant Thunder and the temporary team are from. Once they reach the scavenger base camp, the sergeant that Sergeant Thunder lives at, Zhu King has to pass a trial to get residency permit if he wants to stay in it. So Sergeant Thunder introduces him as the kid to the test administrator. Zhu King meets a girl who is also trying to get a residence pass. He later finds out her name, and there's more interaction about her, but right now she's unnamed. He swaps. So Zhu King then, on the day, they don't fight in an arena right then. It's like the next day. But eventually they draw lots to fight monsters. And the monster that the girl draws is a horned anaconda. So he swaps with the girl. His monster he got was much easier to defeat. The horned anaconda is more difficult. He switches with the girl because he wants to eat the anaconda and he wants to cook it and give it to Sergeant Thunder. So he wins the fight against the snake, a snake-type beast, and loots the gallbladder and meat for Sergeant Thunder. So he just picks it up and just comes walking it out. And you have to keep in mind that he is a kid. And so the shock value to all the residents who are watching this arena, who are hoping for kind of a gladiator-style battle, essentially, and to suddenly see a kid defeat a horned snake, and a lot of them could have defeated it too, but they're like, we're grown adults, we're tough and rumble scavengers. So to see this kid do it, they're like, wow, lots of respect. Don't mess with the kid. This is the first time we see Master 7th observing Zhu King as he fights in the arena. He is completely invisible to everyone around him because he is just so powerful. His level is so much higher than theirs, his cultivation level, that you just cannot see him. He is invisible to all of them. They cannot perceive him. So, but he's here and he's watching Zhu King, and so it piques his interest at this point. Back at Sergeant Thunder's house, he tells Zhu King about his name, Sergeant Thunder, why he's called Sergeant Thunder, because he's in charge of Team Thunderbolt, along with his 3 other members that he has. And during that time that he's talking with him, he's setting the table and preparing the snake. He's going to cook it. And he does an odd thing, that is, he sets a spot for him, for Zhu King, and then he sets an extra one. And when asked, he just says it's for someone who will never come. So later that night, Zhu King breaks through the second layer of ki condensation, the big fight, near-death experience. His cultivation advanced a lot. The girl comes by to let him know that she passed her trial, to say thank you, and that she would one day repay him. Later, Zhu King goes out to buy some white boluses and ends up getting them extorted from him by 2 members from Blood Shadow, and he hatches a plan to hunt them down, track them down one at a time, ends up killing them, going through some pretty tough fights. And Master Seventh is revealed to be watching him do these things and is intrigued. He's like, wow, I want to see what this little wolf pup can do. So now we know that he's being observed by this mysterious figure who is kind of watching him, kind of being entertained, or at least considering him for something at this point. So Master Seventh is in this town waiting for Grandmaster Bai, and has just been amusing himself by observing anyone in the town that has potential to be recruited as his own disciple or to join the 7 Blood Eyes sect. Zhu King unknowingly gets his first wish box from one of the Blood Shadow members' bodies when he's looting him after he kills them. And he also learns that the violet crystal inside of him can help deal with poisons by resisting and healing the damage done by them. One of the Blood Shadow members used a lot of poisons, and Zhu King was relying on the fact that he could heal to overcome it, and then he finds out that it also just resists a certain portion of the poison and the damage and the corrosion, and then kind of heals the rest, making him not impervious where he doesn't take the damage, but he takes less damage than he heals from whatever damage he does receive. So you can physically see him become like green with the poison, and then he'll kind of recover extremely fast, abnormally fast to other people's observation. Zhu King meets the rest of Team Thunderbolt, and they head into the older Forbidden Region that's right by the base camp, the one that's been there for a long time, not the one that was just formed. And on the way out of the town, they have a run-in with Team Blood Shadow. They kind of have a stare down. As they cross into the Forbidden Region, it gives a description. It was already late in the morning, and the sun shone brightly, but the jungle appeared to be a different world altogether. Storm clouds filled the sky above the jungle, complete with lightning bolts that fell occasionally. All in all, the Forbidden Region seemed like a mysterious and dangerous location. So this is the first time Zhu King is going into do a raid in a Forbidden Region, and he's very observant and picks up a lot of useful tips and tricks as he follows along the team. The team has a secret garden inside that produces 7-leaf clovers, and those are used in the white boluses that everyone has to take, so people pay, top dollar for that one particular ingredient, which is like kind of the reason this scavenger camp is by this Forbidden Region, because this Forbidden Region produces a lot of these. And so people go in when the season is ready and they harvest them and bring them out. And so there's a big industry for that here. As they're going on their way, Zhu King is learning all this stuff. They're giving them tips. They're seeing that he's actually not incompetent. And so the group is warming up to him. And they get ambushed by some black-scaled wolves. During that ambush, Zhu King gets attacked by one of the black-scaled wolves' shadow, bends and touches his shadow. And he feels numbness and coldness creeping up his body until it gets to where the crystal is inside of him. And then it releases a counter force And for a second, he's just like, well, that was kind of painful. Wow, I feel uncomfortable. And then the coldness is gone, and he's just like, okay, cool. I feel fine now. That was kind of weird. So eventually, what is known as the shadow becomes his pet of sorts by using the violet crystal to keep the shadow in line. One of the key functions of the shadow during the early part of this story, where mutagen levels are more of a plot point and have to be contended with, is the ability to absorb mutagen from Zhu King, giving him several advantages in this world that is full of mutagen. So one of the things that happens is with this new pet that he's got, is he's able to pull mutagen from his body, essentially purifying him, stopping his levels from getting too high. And it gives him a really big advantage early on, where mutagen levels are more into play, more of a plot point, more of something to be contended with, part of more of the storyline. It gives him faster cultivation, gives him greater mutagen resistance. He can stay in areas full of mutagen for longer than other people. He has almost no fear of mutating because his body is just constantly being purified from it. His cultivation can also reach higher levels than other people because he doesn't have to contend with the possibility of it going out of control. And so he's able to actually pull in more, and it's more pure, and he's able to go further on the cultivation path. And it's also more than just his shadow that's doing this. The violet crystal in him is also allowing him, in his body cultivation, to push his body further because it can take more damage and recover from it more. It's more painful, but then it allows him to reach higher heights. He can push his body at each level to basically the extreme of each level, giving him, ultimately kind of stacking at a higher, further and further level the higher he gets. After the fight, they realized it was a trap set by Blood Shadow, using an item to attract the scaled beasts, and this gives them pause. Do we go? Do we not go? Ultimately, they decide to continue on and to harvest the 7-leaf clovers, but there's kind of like, hey, there's a special way to do it, and we're really good at it. So Zhu King watches, but he basically just sits there and cultivates. And at this point, he advances to the 3rd level of the Sea and Mountain Incantation. And the team is unlucky as they try to leave because they realize, okay, we've been ambushed. They've set up an ambush against us, so let's split up. Everyone tries to go a different way, and we'll just see if we can get back safely by ourselves. It's easier for us to kind of make a break for it if we don't have to defend each other. But the team is unlucky, so one of them, along with Sergeant Thunder, gets ambushed, and by the time Zhu King shows up, one of the members is dead, and Sergeant Thunder he's just barely holding on. He's not dying, but he's contending with the fact that mutagen level is rising. The people who are attacking him aren't really trying to go for a kill as much as just get him to use up all of his energy, so he has to pull more from the surroundings, which then has mutagen in it, and eventually he'll just self-destruct, essentially. They end up beating Team Blood Shadow, but Sergeant Thunder is badly wounded, and they also encounter the Singing Red Shoes of the Forbidden Region. Before we continue on to the rest of the summary, if you're enjoying this content, you can find more over at school.com/immortalcave. It's a book club for people who like web novels. Click the link down below and see you there. So this particular Forbidden Region has a legend in it that if you hear the singing, you will most likely die. But if you survive, the next time you hear the singing, then you'll be able to see someone who you lost or someone you really want to see, someone who's passed on. And this singing shows up again. The area kind of turns a red glow instead of just like a normal fogginess. It's just kind of like a blood red area, and they hear the singing. And Zhu King sees a set of shoes just by themselves, as if someone is wearing them, walking, just nobody's in them. And they're a pair of ladies' red shoes. I imagine high heels, kind of a high heel slipper. It's probably not exactly, but that's what I imagine it to be. Because of this, Sergeant Thunder, who's injured, he's resting under a tree at this time, and Zhu King is essentially frozen in place, and the shoes show up, and because it's Sergeant Thunder's second time, he's actually able to see his lost lover. And because of that, the shoes kind of ignore Zhu King and focus on Sergeant Thunder. They show up. It says that, it's kind of a tender thing, like he can see his lost lover. She kind of looks like she bends down and kind of rubs his cheek. and because he's really beat up, and it's like, is he going to die already, So Zhu King just met this guy. He's been really nice to him. You like, there's some chemistry. You feel like he could be, like, oh, is this the master that kind of picks up the main character and takes him through the rest of the story, is kind of the vibe you get to this point. And right now you're like, maybe not. Maybe he's just going to die. Maybe he's going to be outed. Zhu King and the viewer can't see who the sergeant sees, but, he cries and he says his lover's name, like, oh, is that you? And then the spirit gets up and walks away. Nobody dies. So so Zhu King then picks him up and then carries him on his back, and he's basically racing out of the forbidden region. And they encounter one of the other dangers of this forest, which is called the fog of confusion. And so it's essentially it's like how fog is, but like it's gruish. So it's a little extra. You can't see far, and it's specifically kind of designed to just spiral you in a circle until you die. And it kind of has intelligence. Like the fog is more than just you can't see. But because of the shadow and the violet crystal, he's able to actually see almost through it completely. Like, he can still see that it's there, but it's no longer able to send the same level of confusion that it had been. And because of that, he's able to get through it real quickly, real easily. And in the fog, he actually ends up meeting several other scavengers. And at first he encounters two, and one of them sees who he is, because Zhu King can basically sets up a candle and lights it, and that pushes the fog back. But after a while, the fog, because it's kind of intelligent, will actually snuff out the candle after a while, like earlier than it should be. And so because he can see, he tells him, hey, if you follow my voice, I can get you out of here. And the scavengers are like, is that just a spirit trying to kill us? And, well, we're going to die anyway, so we might as well listen. So Zhu King needs white boluses from them to feed Sergeant Thunder, because the mutagen level's been rising up in him because of Team Bloodshadow's tactic in the battle. So he negotiates, I'll let you out if you give me this. And so basically the two guys, one guy hands it over, and the second guy sees, he looks like a kid with someone on his back. I don't know, like, if I'm actually at a disadvantage here. So before he gives it up, he's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I might actually not have a payment for you. So Zhu King's like, that's fine. Don't worry about it. And then he just walks away. And the other guy's like, wait, no, hold up. My bad. I should have, here it is. It's ready. And so then he's, cursing and screaming off in the distance. And he goes to the other guy and just says, hey, follow my voice and, stay 3 steps behind me. And then, walks him through. And as they're coming out, he meets other people who are caught in the fog of confusion, because scavengers are coming in and out of the base camp all the time, essentially. And they just happen to be unlucky this time when the fog showed up. And so as Zhu King is going through, he's actually picking up people as much as he can to negotiate white boluses, and then just, shoving these like candy down Sergeant Thunder's throat to help lower his mutagen levels. And so it's more than he could have afforded, but because he's helping these people out, he's getting them out. So eventually they get out and they meet up with the two other members of Team Thunder, and they bring Sergeant Thunder to Grandmaster Bai, who, when they show up, he doesn't have to do much, because Sergeant Thunder is basically didn't have any life-threatening wound from this battle. He's like, he's tired. He's just kind of generally wounded. Like, it doesn't need like this, like the, ultimate healing doctor or anything to do. But he's like, but he has old injuries. So he had a cultivation level that had been crippled. And so he actually rebuilt his cultivation level from the ground up. And so he has a kind of an old wound that is like, because of the new ones and fighting, your old one is kind of aggravated. And now if you get another big fight, you're going to be done for, essentially, is what he's saying to him. And so he's like, I can give you some medicine that can kind of help stave off the effects, but they're going to become less and less effective over time, unless you get a lifespan flower, which is, a really powerful, really rare flower. It has appeared in this forbidden region before, but it's not gonna, like, you're gonna be really lucky. I think the phrase that he uses is, it's going to be found by chance, not by when it's sought. Found not when you're sought after it. Yeah, so apparently they had known each other, and so when he wakes up, he's like, hey, I didn't tell them to bring me here. Thank you very much. Like, I'm not worthy of all your help. And the Grandmaster Bai is just like, I really didn't do much anyway. But here's a a medicine that can help stave off the effects. It's going to kind of slowly lose its effect. But basically, Sergeant Thunder's his days are numbered. Like, he only has so much to live now after this big fight, unless they can find a lifespan flower. So Zhu King is going out to buy white boluses to help give to Sergeant Thunder to help remove the mutagen levels and just kind of make him more comfortable and hopefully live a little bit longer. In going to buy the white boluses, he meets the girl who arrived at the same time he did, who came later and said, "Thank you for helping me. I'll repay you somehow." She's the attendant to one of the town's shops. And so he notices that she's got some scars, either from the fight or she had them previously. And he knows that the Sergeant Thunder talked about how there's a temple inside, just past their valley. Basically, there's a temple that kind of marks the outside region and the inside region of the Forbidden region, that scavengers basically go up to the temple and no further. And when Sergeant Thunder is kind of telling him about this, he says that, sometimes there's scar removing powder that's there, and it's really expensive. People from the big cities will love to buy it. So if you ever see anything kind of glows 7 different colors, then, it's really good. Keep an eye out for it. And so he knows this. He sees the girl's scars, and is just kind of in the back of his mind is like, she's been nice to me. If I find some scar removing powder, then, I'll give it to her. She's been nice to me. I'll kind of reciprocate the kindness. He's not really romantically interested in her. He's like 12 or something, but he is, kindness, kindness comes, kindness goes, kind of, so because of these injuries, Sergeant Thunder decides he saved up enough money and he should spend the money before he dies of old age. So he buys a house in the center section, kind of where the actual houses are, instead of the tents that surround the city. So before he dies of old age, he wants to live in a little bit more comfort. So it's kind of a touching moment where Zhu King kind of reminisces over what home means, essentially. And so he's like, I haven't had a home. What did home mean to me? And so you kind of get a little bit of look into his character and kind of the tenderness that's way deep down inside of him, that he still is a kid, wanting to be home, wanting to find his family, wanting to cultivate so that he doesn't die, so he has a chance to survive, kind of just like a little bit of warmth in this really dark, grim world that he's in. Zhu King then spends many days going to Grandmaster Bai's caravan that is staying at the scavenger base camp and listening to Grandmaster Bai's lectures that he's giving to his 2 students. So Grandmaster Bai makes a point to speak extra loud so Zhu King can hear him from the outside of the tent. Eventually, he earns a place in the tent by cleverly bringing random plants and asking Grandmaster Bai, is this a lifespan flower? Is this a lifespan flower? Is this a lifespan flower? And so Grandmaster Bai, seeing through this immediately, takes extra time and care to explain not what a lifespan flower looks like, but what he brought and what it is and all of its characteristics and stuff. So he just can pick up random ones from the Forbidden Zone and bring it to him and be like, is this a lifespan flower? And it kind of builds that rapport and kind of a reason to be there in what he's doing. And kind of can show off a little bit what he knows. He sits there and listens to the lecture. Grandmaster Bai, once he's done, comes out and is just like, so what are you doing here? What do you want? I was like, oh, look, here's my reason. So Zhu King visits the temple complex inside the Forbidden region while he's looking for a lifespan flower. He is able to rely on his shadow grew to absorb mutagen and keep himself relatively safer, so his trips in and out aren't as dangerous as otherwise would be, What ends up happening is while Zhu King is at the temple so he's in the Forbidden region looking for lifespan flower, and while he's at the temple looking for scar removing powder for the girl he knows, he's chased by a whole bunch of grus. And he can hear them. They're kind of like marching. They're kind of invisible, kind of ghostly like. And inside the temple, there's a bunch of statues. And one of them all of a sudden starts glowing this golden color, kind of like the grus have invaded this uninvadable space. What is the inviolable space? Inviolable space. I think that's what it is. And so he just basically comes alive and does this massive sword strike from up, down, bah! and blows away just all of the Grus and everything. And he actually recognizes one of the Grus as the Captain Blood Shadow from the group that they actually ended up fighting and winning against inside the Forbidden region. And so in seeing that technique, it just kind of leaves this impression on him, such a profound impression. And it kind of, as it sits in his mind, as he mulls it over, and as he comprehends it, he starts to imitate that sword strike. And what he's actually doing, he's actually slowly comprehending it and making the sword strike his own, and learning how to do it. And eventually he's able to execute that sword strike. And that's the part that is, the sword strike is actually part of like 7 moves that are part of a forbidden technique when you've learned them all together. This kind of gives an insight into the power of understanding that the MC has, the main character has, Yu-King, and how he's able to see stuff, and just by looking at it and comprehending it, he's able to get great amount of enlightenment and benefit from it. And this tends to be a source of great frustration for his teachers, as he has several throughout the novel, and lots of entertainment for the readers. So as he's also learning this technique and meditating on it and visualizing and learning, he, without even realizing it, actually breaks through the 4th level of ki condensation without even realizing it. Eventually, not eventually, but once he gets back and stuff, and throughout the story, or as the story progresses, Yu-King is not driven away by Grandmaster Bai, because Master 7th actually has recommended Yu-King to Grandmaster Bai, and because of his recommendation, Grandmaster Bai takes him in, or at least that's what he says. He says, it's only because you did it. And Master 7th's like, it's actually because you're just a really nice guy. Like, you are really soft at heart, but you can blame me for it. Like, that's fine. If that's, how you want to save face, that you're really so important that if it weren't for you, I wouldn't say this. Because they both kind of have a different ideology. One is all about cultivation, and one is about scholarly pursuits. And so Master 7th is like, why can't he do both? Just, teach him a bunch, and then if he becomes scholarly and good at cultivating, why can't he do both? So he becomes a student, or at least while he's there in the base camp, he is allowed to be inside during the lectures. So he becomes a regular attendee, and after an intense time of question answering, that Grandmaster Bai just springs on all of the students, and Yu-King in particular, after the other two can't answer these tough questions. So because he'd been coming for about a month, and then he kind of lectures him on the whole past month. And everyone is not shocked, but Grandmaster Bai is very pleased. The other students are like, wow, they feel threatened by just how good he is. So Yu-King's knowledge grew, but he only had the poisonous plants from the Forbidden region to work with, so he ended up focusing on just poison fruits and researching into poisons. So this would eventually blossom into one of his core strengths and fighting powers, poisons. The violet crystal gives him an unparalleled advantage in this area because it gives him resistance to poison, and on top of resistance, he gets recovery from any damage he would have taken. And so because of that, he's like, he can sniff something, he can kind of watch his arm slowly turn green and in black splotchy, and then it would just, slough off, and new skin shows up, and it heals up, and then it's fine. And so he can that was real painful. I could feel that it was, kind of slowing my nerves down, and it's like, okay, I'll add a little this, I'll tweak a little that. So the crystal allows him to really have an unparalleled advantage in his poison research. So he really delves in that direction because he's got the supply, he's got the research, he's got the abilities and the equipment, essentially. And so it really develops into one of his core strengths is poison. Eventually, a caravan of cultivators show up wanting to go into the Forbidden region, and they kind of are hoity-toity. They're from the Violet Lands, one of the major factions, and they've come over to the Forbidden region for something, for the Forbidden region, but they've come over to the scavenger camp to eventually find a guide to go into the Forbidden region. Sergeant Thunder eventually decides to buy a house in a neighboring city to live in comfort instead of a scavenger base camp. And in telling Yu-King this, he starts to give him kind of advice, like, hey, don't eat cold food, feed the pets around here, watch out for the other scavengers, And he also happens to mention to watch out for the camp owner, because he's part of the golden, and I think it's Vajera warrior. I'm going to check that out. Vijara? Vijara? Vijara. Probably, right? The Golden Vijara, whatever. Golden Vijara warrior sects are the most powerful in this local region, and not to mess with the camp owner, because he's an elder from that sect, just kind of managing this area. And so it's foreshadowing for, who is who, what's what. Zhu King sees Sergeant Thunder off when he goes to the city to live in. Zhu King actually carries him most of the way and stays until the city gates close for the night. He doesn't have a passport, so he's not allowed to stay, but he is able to walk Sergeant Thunder from the scavenger base camp all the way over to the city, which in Chinese culture, the further you see someone off, so if you go all the way to their destination, it just shows a great respect and deference that you're showing to them. And it's just kind of the same in this culture. Like it is very respectful that he's showing that he's taking him all the way there, and he really misses him, and he's sad that he's going. It's just kind of neat to see that a cultural reference in the literature. That's so normal for them, but not for us in Western culture. Where you start to see the theme of the book, that people come into our lives and sometimes they leave, but they're not ever really forgotten. And the main character kind of starts to get this list of people that he's known that are kind of leaving his life, and kind of showing them the melancholy of it all. Sergeant Thunder is the first of the list of characters to leave after the MC, to leave the main character, to leave Zhu King, after leaving a big impression on him. Master 7 sees the whole thing of Zhu King going and helping out and taking him the whole way and coming back, and is actually quite impressed, and he admires Zhu King's affection and his faithfulness. Zhu King then throws himself back into cultivation, I'm going to really focus, just kind of numb the pain to distance himself from the sadness that he's feeling. And through this renewed vigor of focus, he ends up breaking through to the fifth layer of fifth layer of sea and mountain incantation that he's doing. Eventually, Zhu King does find some scar-removing powder for the girl that he first was doing the coming in and getting his residency with, and the one who's helping him out inside the store and stuff. So he just gives it to her. He has it ready to give it to her as an act of kindness, not because he's romantically interested, like in the slightest, but it's just kind of something nice that he's trying to do for her. So in coming back, he ends up seeing a bunch of people from the Church of the Departed, or the Church of the Departure, not Church of the Departed, Church of the Departure. It's a key difference, and you find out later why, or at least what their name really is about. So he finds out she's from the Church of the Departure, and her older brother is a high position in kind of the Inquisitor, going to, people of the law enforcement of that organization. And she's just been waiting for him at this scavenger base camp for her brother. And so now she's leaving with him, and soon Master Bai will be leaving with his 2 students. Zhu King does give her the scar-removing powder for her face. So, she's also, and then she gives him a candy, because she sees that he's sad because Sergeant Thunder's gone. So Zhu King is like, I'm sad Sergeant Thunder's leaving. This girl I know is leaving. Grandmaster Bai is about to leave, and his students. So everyone I know is just leaving, and I'm just ho-hum and glum. So she gives him a candy to try to cheer him up. Tells him, my mom always said, if I was ever sad, that I could have a candy and it'll make me feel better. So Grandmaster Bai reveals that he has been teaching. So when Grandmaster Bai is about to leave, so he kind of gives his last lecture, and then sends the other two students aren't there, or sends them out. And so then he reveals to Zhu King that he's actually been teaching him the ingredients to the white boluses amongst the other stuff he's been teaching. And so he tells him, like on the 7th, 4th, 26th, and 18th day, think about what I taught you on every single one of those days, and put them together in the ratio of like 1, 4, 11, 7, and cook it for this much time and then let it dry, and then you'll have a white bolus. And he's just like, I don't think that all of humanity needs to hoard their knowledge, because then it might be lost, and it should benefit all of humanity. But I took a vow not to give these formulas away for free. And so because of that, I can't tell you exactly how to do it, what it is, but I can tell you, just remember on those days, and he reveals that he had been telling him the formula. Grandmaster Bai also leaves a profound saying, kind of one of the, like, almost kind of summarizes the theme of the book too, to Zhu King. Finally, there's one more thing I want to tell you. Remember this. The world is a tavern for living beings, and the Timescape is an old guest. As long as we don't die, we'll meet again. I hope that when we do, you'll have made something of yourself. So after Grandmaster Bai leaves and Zhu King returns to his home, Master Seventh has his servant give Zhu King a common identity medallion for the Seven Blood Eyes sect, and gives him the bare bone basic information. Like, just let him know that this white medallion will let him get entrance into the sect, and he can have a one-time teleportation from any of the Seven Blood Eyes cities to their main headquarters, one time, for free, to then take the test to join. The servant then realizes that Master Seventh is giving him a white lowest rank as a trial, because it turns out that the first 3 apprentices, or at least the last 3 direct disciples that the 7th peak that Master Seventh has, were picked the same exact way. They were given just a white medallion and told, join the sect. And the idea was that they would make their way up into the organization until they got to a level where Master Seventh would then directly take them as their disciple, because they would be worthy and stuff. And this long drawn out process is a challenge specifically reserved for those who he's kind of picked to go through this long trial. And so the greater the disadvantage they're given, the higher the expectations are on the other side. And so the servant is like, oh man, we're going to have a fourth disciple, head disciple, which would be, in the servant's hierarchy, he calls him like a 4th young master. So Zhu King then heads into the Forbidden Region when he gets a request from one of the scavengers to buy insurance from Zhu King. So the scavenger is going to guide the visitors in, and they're going to go searching for something, and he wants insurance from Zhu King to, if the fog of confusion shows up, to get him out. And this is something that's been happening in the story once from the time Zhu King took a bunch of people out with Sergeant Thunder. Those people and a few others even tried to basically give him insurance payments. Like, here's some white boluses, maybe here's a spirit coin or few, and if I don't show up in 3 days, come rescue me. And so Zhu King only took like this guy's and maybe one other's, or no, definitely at least these 2, and not really anyone else's, because it's probably just a trap from other people. And so the guy shows up and lets him know, hey, I'm taking these people into the Forbidden Region. Come get me if you can, if we don't show up soon. So he's like, okay, fine, whatever. I was planning to go there anyway, because all my friends are gone. And so I'm just going to go in and to the valley and do some more poison research. But in going in, he realizes that, hey, I actually had taken another request from another guy, and it's been about 3 days, and I haven't seen him yet, so he's probably stuck in there. So I'll just go looking for him, because he paid me life insurance, which is enough for me to like escort him out. That's what I agreed to do. So he actually stumbles upon a plot where the camp owner is actually capturing scavengers in the forest. So he's sending his guards and henchmen in to ambush scavengers and then sell them off as living treasures for profit. After the fight with the goons, he kills them all and heads to his laboratory in the hidden valley that Team Thunderbolt maintains. And he tries to make white boluses, but really fails. And he makes black boluses instead of white. So black ones attract mutagen instead of purifying them. But he ends up making quite a few of them, and they're end up being quite useful as bombs, essentially. So he makes a bunch he's researching until he's basically out of all of his resources and what he has to work with there. And he doesn't have everything on that list that Master Bai told him about. He tries to find some substitutes. So similar properties, similar ratios, similar characteristics or even complete opposite characteristics, and they try to use some he calls it yin-yang polarity. So it's got the opposite. So if with enough opposite, it can actually do the same thing. It's kind of the logic. Okay, and so while he's doing all this research, he ends up actually advancing to the 6th level. That's 3, but 6th level of the sea and mountain incantation. So he's moving up. The story is progressing. These benchmarks kind of show that the story is it's still moving along, whether it feels like it or not, which I guess is an interesting point. I should make sure I add that to my story. As he goes looking for medicinal plants for his research, he actually runs into a giant jellyfish. And these are giant, several story tall, kind of like the Pokemon jellyfish. But these are more translucent and they'll have eyes on their tentacles and stuff. And they freeze everything around them. And it actually turns out that these jellyfish are being lured out by one of the girls in the group from the Violet Lands. She actually has been contracted by the Church of the Departure to lure out all of these jellyfish so they can get something in the center of the Forbidden Region. And it goes really well. So well that they're basically ambushed and almost completely wiped out. The scavenger that bought insurance from Zhu King gets killed. They all try to make it to the temple there because it has kind of the Forbidden Region around there is sort of pushed back by just the majestic aura of the ancient city, kind of still resisting the Forbidden Region. And so they try to make a stand there. Ultimately, they end up getting driven out, and Zhu King tries to avoid them because he's not my problem really. They're surrounded. The guy's already dead that I said I would help, so I'm just gonna mind my own business and go about my way. So he tries, but eventually the team stumbles upon the secret valley. They see his laboratory. They're like, hey, mind if we stay here? And Zhu King reluctantly, but agrees. But before they can really do too much, another jellyfish has already shown up because that girl is just kind of leaving breadcrumbs to lure them in. So she has a teleportation talisman, which she can crush and just teleports her out of danger, right back home, no problem. So her life's not really in danger. And everyone else sees that she does that and are kind of smiles bitterly it must be nice to be so important because she's of the direct bloodline in their clan back in the Violet Lands. And the rest of them are of collateral bloodline, and so they're not as important, so they weren't given these teleportation talismans to get out. After an intense slaughter and a tense standoff, Zhu King manages to scare off the remaining jellyfish and save the day. A young man who was kind of their leader in the group of the younger people, not of the guards and the elders that were protecting them. He's actually Grandmaster Bai's grandnephew. So Zhu King actually realizes he's actually related to this person who I have great feelings for and affection for. So I'm going to try harder to make sure that they actually survive. So he ends up actually guiding them out of the Forbidden Region because of his relationship with Grandmaster Bai. So he kind of has, instead of just a standoffish, he feels a little bit of responsibility for Grandmaster Bai's grandnephew and leads them all out. And he gets a sword. It's a really nice sword. He actually was using it to kill the jellyfish, and his sword actually was able to survive the invasion of the mutagen from the blood and the acidity and stuff from killing them. And it's invaded with mutagen, so it's not really in perfect condition, but that's essentially the fate of all the weapons in this world and treasures. That's why you have living people who are living treasures to suck that mutagen out of higher grade treasures so they can be used more. The level of this weapon would not be, he wouldn't use it as a living, he wouldn't need a living treasure to cleanse it because it's not so important. But it's just worth of note that, he was given something kind of nice, even though it's a little damaged. When Zhu King gets back to the camp, he finds out, that Sergeant Thunder has been captured by the camp owner. So even though Sergeant Thunder's been hiding, he left the camp and went to another city. He's been tracked down by a nemesis from his past who ended up actually crippling his cultivation in a kind of a fight to the death. Sergeant Thunder thought he had killed his nemesis in the past, but it turns out his nemesis in the past is alive and also survived the encounter and also happens to be friends with the camp owner. So the camp owner, to carry favor with this nemesis of Sergeant Thunder, gets out and gets Sergeant Thunder and captures him. And the two other remaining members of Team Thunder, they try to rescue him and fail. So Zhu King is hearing this story when he gets back there inside of Sergeant Thunder's old home. And so he immediately is just, up in arms and everything. And they're like, hey, this other guy, he's part of a group called Night Dove, and they're like a super secret black market organization in human trafficking, and they're really scary and really powerful, and so we should be careful and not go out and try to kill them. But Zhu King is just like, it's going to be a path of blood. So he leaves a bloody trail as he clears the camp owner's guards that are around his house that the city owner sent to try to kill him, so he ends up killing the camp owner's guards. Before Zhu King confronts the camp owner and Sergeant Thunder's nemesis, he has to fight against a level 8 key condensation expert and body refiner. So two people. One's an expert in just in magical techniques, and one's a body refiner. So he basically is really big and strong and rah. But he focuses on kind of physical attacks and stuff, and the other one focuses more magical and elemental stuff. He still beats them. So he kills them one at a time. He uses poison with one of them and brute force with the other guy. And then as he's walking up to the city owner's mansion, gets ambushed by the city owner, who basically is on the other side of the door and just smashes his way through to try to surprise him. And Zhu King then sees that Sergeant Thunder is being held by Sergeant Thunder's nemesis. And like this, I got him right here. What are you going to do? Don't fight too hard. You can't fight back. But Zhu King still manages to win in the end. He uses his shadow and positions himself with the sun behind him, so his shadow is able to get onto Sergeant Thunder's nemesis, his captor, his wrist, and then just injects a whole bunch of mutagen in there. And so the nemesis then jumps back and his hand starts to mutate, and because of that he loses Sergeant Thunder, and so he ends up jumping back. And Zhu King then grabs Sergeant Thunder and throws him to the other two members of Team Thunder who are hiding in the crowd. They get him and they start to back away. So without the threat of the hostage, Zhu King is then able to fight at full power. Sergeant Thunder's nemesis used kind of ghost theme magics to attack and defend, but Zhu King just ends up defeating him and killing him in the end, and kind of just barreling through his techniques. So in this life and death battle, Zhu King tries out the imitation of the sword strike he'd kind of been working on, and he ends up successfully using it to split the camp owner just straight in half. So everyone is sitting there in awe and shock, and they start saying his name, Kid, because that's the name that Sergeant Thunder gave him when he was introducing him when he first brought him to the town, or to the scavenger base camp. And they kind of start chanting his name as kind of a sign of respect and admiration for the kid. Zhu King takes Sergeant Thunder into the Forbidden Region to bury him by the same tree that he had seen his lover at, that the singing voice had came and kind of visited him. So he buries him there after giving a drink, and after he passes away, he buries him, gives him a tombstone, great honor. It really is kind of sad. And you feel all the feels. You feel all the feels because you didn't know. You felt like he was going to be there for the whole time, and then he's not. And so you really do feel feels. And I feel like even rereading it, I still feel the feels. So if you read it, I think you're still going to feel the feels. Even if you know it's coming, you're still going to feel the feels. After mourning Sergeant Thunder in his own way, Zhu King leaves the Forbidden Region essentially out a different way than he came in. He leaving the scavenger camp behind him and moving on. So after killing the camp owner, who's an elder of the Golden Vajra warrior sect, he knows that they're going to be after him, And he killed actually 2 elders, because one of the ones that he fought right before he got to the camp owner was a Golden Vajra warrior sect elder. And so he's like, I've killed 2. They're going to come after me. So I'm just going to book it to some organization that's going to make them scared, which is 7 Blood Eyes. And so he's like, I need to get there as soon as I can. So, and this is where we finally meet the patriarch of the Golden Vajra warrior sect for the first time. And so knowing what is to come and reading this section again to make this video, it really does make you smile, because you see how cute the patriarch is at this point, like how powerful and scary he is, but how the role ends up flipping so much later down the road. And so you're looking at this and you're like, oh wow, he was a pretty scary character at one point. Like, this is it's kind of funny, to see him all big and important. Those who've read it will appreciate, because this is actually where he ends up using, when you meet him and stuff and he's talking, it's where he uses one of the, I think it's his kind of iconic line, because he uses it a few times throughout the story. And he says, based on accounts I've read and the ancient records throughout the years. And then we'll kind of explain something. It's really funny, because he goes on to say the basic plot point of a Zhuangzi story, of every Zhuangzi ever. Snorting coldly, the patriarch continued, I can tell that if you 2 go out and run into him, he'll end up killing you both. Looking at the sect leader, he said, then you'd get pissed off and go chasing after him, and he'd kill you too. Finally, I would show up, but by that time he'd be long gone. Then years later, he'd come back and slap me to death in a single blow. And you're just like, yeah, that's the plot of so many of them. So it's really funny. It's kind of like a self-aware moment of the novel. So Ergen just did a great job. They do find him eventually, so they use some tracking talismans to try to track down Zhu King. And it does turn out as bad as Patriarch Golden Vajra warrior predicted, ending in several of the elders' death and Zhu King emerging victorious in just a very typical, understandable, and predictable way. But you're here for the ride, and so it's great. So Zhu King, he manages to return to the Forbidden Region that the story started in, as he's discovered and chased by the Golden Vajra warrior sect and the Patriarch. Inside, they meet a powerful Gru spirit that attacks those around Zhu King and ends up killing them and fighting for him, essentially. And Zhu King escapes because he's shown kindness to the dead bodies when he was burning them earlier in the story, when he was showing them respect by cremating them. Though the spirits of the dead kind of had conglomerated into a single entity, Gru, and their sadness and sorrow extends to those around them, those who they encounter. But because Zhu King has showed them kindness, they recognize him. And because of that, they actually show him just gratitude instead of sorrow and sadness. And so they just pass him by. They leave him alone. And so he's able to then get Patriarch Golden Vajra into a bunch of grooves, and he's able to lure that beast from the governor's mansion that he had mentioned way back in chapter 1 to fight him. And in that big fight, he exits the Forbidden Region, leaving him there. And it's actually during this time, I had mentioned it earlier in the video, that the rabbit, the blood-soaked rabbit, when he comes back the next day, but it's actually now that he comes back and sees the bloody rabbit, and it's sitting up and looking around, and so he just like, alarm bells, go away. The same for Patriarch Golden Vajra. He also sees it, but at this time it's staring at him and has like those, black eyes and creepiness, and he's just like, also like, even though I'm powerful, I'm also gonna back up. Goodbye, little bunnies. See you later. Like, we're not sticking around here. So after leaving Patriarch Golden Vajra warrior in the Forbidden Region, instead of going to Antler City to then go to 7 Blood Eyes, he actually goes to the Golden Vajra warrior sect and just wreaks havoc, because all of their disciples are out looking for him. So it's basically a defenseless home, except for the patriarch. There's the sect leader. So the patriarch is above in hierarchy and stuff. And so he shows up and just releases a bunch of poison into the air, like the wind, downwind, so that it goes into the sect. or upwind from the sect, so it goes into it, and then just starts throwing the poison black boluses around, so mutagen is just everywhere, and there's poison everywhere. And then, to add on to that all, he goes into a house to loot it, looks around real quick to see anything he can get, and then just lights it on fire, and then runs to the next one, looks around for something, lights it on fire, and just runs around lighting fire. So their houses are all on fire, their buildings are on fire, there's mutagen everywhere, which has to be purified, and then there's poison just in the air. So everyone is suffering from everything. There's fog everywhere. They can't see anything. The mutagen is causing this huge vortex, which then the fire is adding to, and there's just all this, like wind and stuff. And so there's just, everyone is extremely miserable. And eventually, Zhu King finds the treasure pavilion and then just goes in and just loots the place. And because of the mutagen that's spreading, he notices that it's actually going under a false wall. So he's able to break down and find their secret vault, which is just a bag that he takes. He's like, well, if it's that important, it must be special. Grabs a special bag. It's got a trap device around it, but he's able to overcome it, throw some black boluses, and it just kind of melts away the defenses and grabs the bag and gets out of there. So by the time the Patriarch Golden Vajera shows up, as Zhu King thought he might, Zhu King already leaves. So the whole place is just kind of in a wreck, and Patriarch Golden Vajera is just absolutely livid. And, I'll kill you someday, Zhu King. Or not, I don't even know if he knows his name, actually. But he just says, I'll kill you. I'll get you. And obviously, main character can't hear him. So this is how the novel describes the importance of the city that Zhu King would now get a chance to enter and make a name for himself in. From a distance, it was possible to see that the city attached to the port was divided into 7 sections, with one part being the port districts. Overall, it was an astonishing and beautiful and powerful looking city. This place was the capital of the 7 Blood Eyes. Next to it were 7 peaks that were the northern terminus of the Mountains of Truth. Atop each peak was a 300-meter stone statue of an eye. Each eye was a different color, but they all seemed to look out with sharp gazes. Whether it was day or night, those eyes never closed. In fact, they formed a grand spell formation that covered the area. The 7 eyes looked out over the lands like the eyes of a massive beast, awe-inspiring and cold, such that anyone who looked at them felt shaken to the core. Zhu King enters the city after presenting his medallion at the gate. He learns that the sect entrance exam is happening the following day and needs to wait out the night, and goes looking for an inn. He can't find one, so it takes him all into the night looking for an inn to stay. And as he's looking around in the city trying to find an inn, he notices that the streets become absolutely deserted, but he just cannot find one. Once he sees one, he's approaching it, and he hears footsteps behind him, and his heart kind of sinks, like, I'm about to be mugged on my first day here. And it turns out it's actually a woman being chased by a group of men who are accusing her of stealing their resources and stuff. And she then calls out to Zhu King, hey, I gave you the resources. You were supposed to run. What are you doing here? And then she peels off. And that means that some of the guys is he an accomplice? Is he not? So they peel off some of them and chase after him, and the rest chase after the girl. Zhu King, of course, denies and I don't even know her. I don't have anything. And they said, well, maybe it's just your unlucky day. And Zhu King just asks a very simple question. If they're 7 Blood Eyes sect disciples? And they're like, no. So he's like, okay. And then pulls out his iron skewer and proceeds to kill them all. He mentions that he didn't want to kick off his adventure in the city by killing people. But he doesn't get his wish. He ends up fighting them. He ends up winning. And once the fight is over, he notices the innkeeper watching from the door of the inn and offers to buy the bodies that he had from the people that he had just killed. Zhu King is kind of creeped out about this and just like, haven't had someone just offer to buy the bodies, and he's suspicious. So instead of selling them to the innkeeper, he just throws some corpse ravaging powder on them, and they just dissolve into a bloody goo and then soak into the street. The innkeeper laments that fresh bodies are always best, but oh well. And then he tells Zhu King, I have 3 rooms left. I'm the only one that's open this late, so I'm your only chance. He says you have to pay for it for the night. And you hear footsteps running up as another cultivator or another person runs up, throws a bag to the innkeeper, and just barrels into the inn. And so so then the innkeeper turns to him and goes, "Oh, now I have 2 rooms." So Zuking then pays him and goes to his room. And once he's there, he's able to take out the bag of holding that he got from the Golden Vajera warrior sect and examine what it is. And it turns out that it's actually a very rare but commonly found item in the Zhuangzi novels. It's a bag of holding. So he has a tiny bag, and inside's it's a 4th dimensional space, so it's larger on the inside than the outside. The bag that he got can actually hold a small desk inside of it. So it has probably 2 cubic square feet of space. And inside there, he finds 111 spirit stones that are being stored along with some pills that he could trade with some white boluses and some dust pills, which are like a different version of white boluses. So he's immediately just overwhelmed because 1 spirit stone is worth 1,000 spirit coins. So up to this point, the currency has been spirit coins. And now he has 111,000 spirit coins right in front of him. So he's just like, wow, this is a big windfall. And so he's like, I can now buy anything that I need. Like I'm pretty set now. So spirit stones can be used directly for cultivation, and especially at these lower levels, it's really beneficial. As you get higher, you're going to need hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of spirit stones just to advance. So they become more viable as just currency than actual cultivation resources. But because they can be used as cultivation resources, they're as valuable as a currency. They're something that everybody values as a base amount in what they do. And you also need spirit stones to power your magical treasures, to power your ships, to power your arrays. So they're used everywhere. I guess it's kind of like us trading batteries or something. I'm not going to say that. Zuking makes his way to the assessment area at noon the next day. And the testing grounds were located at the south end of the city, right at the foothills of the Mountains of Truth. At the testing grounds, there's a large square with glittering shield that only let people in with medallions that are going to be for the test. Inside, Zuking learns more about the 7 peaks of the 7 Blood Eyes. Each peak has its own specialty and specialty disciples and elders that devote themselves specifically to that one specialty. The 7th has to do with the port and the Forbidden Sea. The 6th peak has to do with forging. The 5th has to do with formations, like spell formations and stuff. And the 4th has to do with beast taming, beasts, mutant beast, and grooves. The 3rd has to do with magical techniques, so any sort of elemental manipulation. They're kind of like your mages. The 2nd is the Tao of Alchemy, so any pills that are made, the white boluses, the dust pills, and the plethora of other pills throughout here are made using the Tao of Alchemy. It's very common in Zhuangzi novels to have alchemy as a part of the universe. The 1st is the outward-facing sword of the sect. They do all their training in forbidden regions on land, and they rarely go out to sea unless they are very confident in their skills and abilities. Zuking has to pass 3 tests to be accepted as a disciple into the 7 Blood Eyes. First, he has to get his mutagen levels checked. He controls the shadow to actually pull the mutagen back into his body to try to guesstimate what is a passing grade. And he manages to get a low to mid passing grade, which the lower it is, the better. So he doesn't really stand out too much because if he had none, it would stand out a lot. So he just kind of pulled back some in himself to try to get a good score and not raise any suspicion. The 2nd one, he completely arouses suspicion because it's a test where the test administrators take a highly diluted drop of godly blood, stick it into a bowl that then causes the aura of that to be amplified, and a projection of the god that the blood was taken from ends up appearing above the bowl in the testing area. And it's like this giant eye with tentacles for eyelashes, I suppose. And just its sheer presence puts forth a pressure on the testes, and they just have to kind of sit there and resist it with whatever mental mantra, technique, willpower that they have. And those who last longer get a better score. And the blood is consumed as it's going, as it's releasing the aura. It can only last a certain amount of time. And Zhu King at first is like, I'll just last until there's like 3 people left, and then oh no, I can't do it anymore. But his pride and his unwillingness to give up, to like fake it, because he's like, I survived the gaze of the broken face of the god. Like, it looked down the area where I was and made a forbidden region, and I survived that. So there's no way I'm going to give up to this projection of this tiny little diluted drop of blood of this tiny, because he could feel the difference in the class, like Firefly, Sun, between the 2 gods that he's experienced the gazes of. And so he's just like, I'm not going to give up to this. This guy's puny compared to this. Zhu King is puny, and he ends up having to resist with all of his might, everything. And he ends up using the Seas and Mountain incantation to summon the projection of blood, which is a sign of the great circle of completion for his technique. So he basically got it to a high enough level that it can now manifest a visual phenomena around him. And that visual phenomena is able to help resist the aura that's coming from this godly projection that's coming from the drop of blood. And so the aura and the pressure that's coming off of this projection, he's able to resist with his own projection of blood. And it allows him to last until the blood actually is completely gone. And so because of that, his will is actually sharpened, and he notices that his senses are better, his willpower is stronger. So he's the only one that lasts the whole time. The other people can't do it. He's the MC, main character, so obviously he can last till the end. And this shocks everybody, and wow, he's super impressive. And the test administrators see the projection of blood that he created, and they tell him, you get an automatic pass for the 3rd, because the 3rd is just to fight mutant beasts, and you're going to defeat all of them. Like, the level that you're at to create a projection of blood, which means you're at the great circle of completion of that technique, means that you're automatically going to win. There's no competition. And so you get full marks in the 3rd, full marks in the 2nd, and the first one, you're mid to high tier, or mid to low, which gives them, a higher score. So all of these combined gives him first place in the 3 tests, and everyone gets 1,000 spirits coins as like seed money when they join the sect, and Zhu King is given 10,000 spirit coins because he got first place. Those who failed are given 2 hours to leave the sect, or the sect array that guards the city, that protects it from the mutagen and keeps the mutagen out and makes inside a very desirable place to live. People live longer because there's no mutagen. The array that's guarding the city can detect if someone inside the city is an invader. And essentially they're a guest while they're trying to take the test. If they fail the test because they failed to pass one of the 3 tests, or they got too low of score in all of them, then they are given 2 hours to leave. If they don't, the array just activates and will just incinerate them on the spot. Zhu King is led up the 7th peak and told to cherish this moment, for as it may be the only time he ever gets to go up the mountain in his lifetime. But we know that he's the main character, and we know he'll be here again, and we know he'll succeed because we're rooting for him. This ends the synopsis of the first 50 free chapters on Wuxia World, and it covers an introduction to Beyond the Timescape. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.